Imagine this. It's a calm morning. The sky glows orange. Birds are flying, and you're sipping your coffee while watching the sunrise. Everything feels perfect. Until suddenly, it doesn't. Without warning, a thunderous roar echoes through the air. The wind starts screaming like a jet engine. Trees bend and snap. The ground trembles violently beneath your feet. You drop your cup, trying to balance, but gravity itself seems confused. In the next fraction of a second, your world has changed forever. The reason? Earth has stopped spinning. You wouldn't see it coming. No warning, no time to react. One moment, everything is still and peaceful. The next, continents are tearing apart. Oceans are exploding into the atmosphere, and entire cities are being thrown thousands of miles away at unimaginable speeds. At first, you might think it's just an earthquake or a freak storm. But then you notice the sun, frozen in the sky, stuck between day and night. Half the planet is scorched under endless daylight, the other half trapped in eternal darkness. And that's only the beginning. Every living thing on Earth depends on one simple motion: our planet's rotation. It controls the wind, the weather, the tides, even time itself. If that motion suddenly stopped, all that motion has to go somewhere. Cars, buildings, oceans, even the atmosphere. They'd all keep moving at that same speed, turning the planet into chaos in a single heartbeat. But what would happen next? Could humanity survive? Would the planet ever start spinning again? Or would Earth become a silent, frozen world, half in fire, half in darkness? In this video, we're diving deep into the most shocking what-if question in science. What would really happen if Earth suddenly stopped spinning?
The sudden stop. What actually happens? Let's start with the basics. Our planet spins at about 1,670 kilometers per hour, or 1,037 miles per hour at the equator. That's faster than a bullet train, faster than a jet plane. And yet, we don't feel it, because everything, including the atmosphere, moves with us. But imagine that spin suddenly stopping, instantly. The result? Catastrophic. Every single object not firmly anchored to bedrock would continue moving at that same speed, 1,670 kilometers per hour eastward. Buildings would collapse. Oceans would surge over continents. Cars, trees, people, everything would be thrown through the air at unimaginable speeds. It wouldn't just feel like an earthquake. It would feel like the Earth itself had turned into a blender. The first moments would be pure chaos. Winds of over 1,000 miles per hour would tear across the globe. Skyscrapers would shatter, mountains would crumble, even the air would become a deadly weapon, compressing and igniting in bursts of friction-fueled fire. Cities on the equator, like Quito or Singapore, would face the worst of it. Meanwhile, near the poles, where rotation is slower, the devastation might be slightly less violent, but no place on Earth would escape completely unharmed. And the oceans? They would be the planet's greatest weapon, because water has mass and momentum. So as the Earth stopped, the oceans would keep moving. We're talking about massive tsunamis thousands of meters high, sweeping across entire continents. Within minutes, coastlines would vanish. The rotation of Earth also creates the equatorial bulge, that slight thickness around the middle of our planet. Without the spin, gravity would redistribute this bulge. The oceans would flow toward the poles, drowning much of Canada, Russia, and Northern Europe, while exposing the seafloor near the equator. In just a few hours, Earth would start to look like an entirely new planet, one with new shorelines, new continents, and new climates. But the scariest part? The atmosphere wouldn't stop with Earth. It would continue spinning for hours, maybe even days, slamming everything in its path. Imagine a never-ending hurricane encircling the planet, tearing apart whatever survived the initial impact. And in the middle of this destruction, humans, if any survived, would witness something extraordinary: the sky. Because as the Earth's spin stopped, the rhythm of day and night would be broken forever.
A world without day and night. Imagine waking up one morning, only to find the sun frozen in the exact same spot in the sky. No sunrise, no sunset, just an endless day for half the world and eternal night for the other half. At first, it might seem beautiful. Permanent daylight for some, an endless starry sky for others. But this would quickly turn into a nightmare. The side facing the sun would begin to scorch. Temperatures would skyrocket past 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit within days. Rivers would evaporate, crops would burn, and cities would transform into deserts of blazing heat. Meanwhile, the other half of the Earth, locked in darkness, would freeze solid. Oceans would begin to crystallize, winds would die, and life would vanish under sheets of ice. Humans living in the twilight zone, that narrow line between day and night, would be the only ones with a chance to survive. But even there, chaos would reign. Think about it, a place where it's always dusk, where the temperature swings wildly between hot and cold. Ecosystems would collapse, animals would migrate endlessly towards survivable zones, and humans would desperately try to build shelters that balance both extremes. Electricity grids would fail. Our entire concept of time would vanish. Without rotation, the 24-hour day, the rhythm that governs every human biological process, would no longer exist. Sleep patterns, crop growth, weather systems, everything would be thrown into total confusion. People would lose their sense of time. Depression and madness would spread rapidly. Imagine living in a world where clocks are meaningless and morning and night no longer exist. Even satellite communication that depend on the Earth's rotation would fall out of sync. GPS would stop working. Airplanes couldn't navigate. The internet would become unreliable. In short, the modern world would begin to fall apart piece by piece. And yet, in this still world, one strange phenomenon would appear: massive winds. Because while the Earth's surface would stop moving, the atmosphere wouldn't. The air would keep rushing at over 1,000 miles per hour, creating storms larger and more violent than anything we've ever seen. Entire cities would be blown away in minutes. This world, divided between fire and ice, wind and stillness, would be beautiful in a haunting, apocalyptic way. It would remind humanity just how fragile our spinning home really is.
The collapse of gravity and oceans. If the Earth suddenly stopped spinning, the effects on gravity would be catastrophic. Not because gravity itself would disappear, but because the centrifugal force that slightly counteracts gravity would vanish instantly. Right now, as the Earth spins at about 1,670 kilometers per hour, or 1,037 miles per hour at the equator, everything on it, including oceans, air, and people, is pushed slightly outward. That tiny outward force makes us feel a bit lighter near the equator than at the poles. But if the planet stopped spinning, That outward push would vanish in a fraction of a second. Everything that isn't firmly attached to the ground would keep moving eastward at full speed. Imagine this: cars, houses, entire cities, all continuing to move at over 1,000 miles per hour, tearing through landscapes. The result? Global devastation on a scale we can't even picture. Mountains would crumble, oceans would surge inland, and continents would drown under mega-tsunamis thousands of meters high. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans would combine and flood everything within reach. Coastlines would vanish in minutes. Even the air would keep moving, turning into a wall of hurricane-force winds circling the globe. Anything standing tall, trees, skyscrapers, towers, would be ripped apart. But after the chaos, something strange would happen. As the world settled, gravity would start to pull everything, especially water, toward the poles. That's because the Earth is not a perfect sphere. It bulges slightly at the equator due to rotation. If it stopped spinning, it would slowly reshape into a more perfect sphere, and this would cause oceans to migrate north and south. The equator would dry out completely, leaving behind vast deserts where once were tropical seas. Meanwhile, the poles would drown under miles of newly displaced water, forming gigantic polar oceans that would swallow most of Canada, Russia, and Northern Europe. The map of the world would become unrecognizable. Where there was once land, there would be ice-cold ocean, and where there was ocean, now endless desert plains. And let's not forget, without rotation, the Earth's magnetic field would start collapsing over time. That invisible shield that protects us from deadly cosmic radiation? Gone. Solar radiation would start bombarding the atmosphere, stripping it away molecule by molecule. Auroras would vanish, GPS systems would stop working, and the night sky would begin to glow faintly from incoming particles. A silent reminder that the planet is dying from the inside out. The atmosphere would thin. Breathing would become harder. Rain would stop because weather, as we know it, depends entirely on the rotation of the Earth to circulate air and water vapor. The oceans that once gave us life would become lifeless, stagnant basins of boiling or frozen water. And humanity, if it still existed, would be forced underground or into artificial cities built on the thin twilight edge between unbearable heat and endless night. In short, the spinning Earth doesn't just give us days and nights, it keeps everything alive. Without that rotation, gravity alone can't save us. The oceans, the air, and even our sense of time would collapse into chaos.
The fall of atmosphere and sky chaos. If Earth suddenly stopped spinning, the air around us wouldn't stop instantly. It would keep moving at more than 1,000 miles per hour in the direction the planet was rotating. That means the atmosphere would turn into a global storm system of unimaginable power. For the first few minutes, winds would shred the surface of the planet. Every building, every forest, every mountain slope, all would face hurricane-force blasts strong enough to rip rock apart. Entire oceans would be blown hundreds of miles inland, carrying ships, whales, and debris in the air like dust. Cities near the equator would be completely erased within moments. Skyscrapers would topple like dominoes. Even continents would start to erode as shockwaves ripped through the crust. It would feel as if the atmosphere itself had declared war on Earth. But then, something even stranger would happen. Without rotation, there would be no Coriolis effect.
the invisible force that shapes weather systems. That means no trade winds, no jet streams, no hurricanes, just chaotic vertical air movement. The planet's climate would collapse into dead zones of still, stagnant air and violent superstorms where the winds crash and die. The sky itself would change color. With the magnetic field fading, charged particles from the sun would pour directly into our atmosphere. They would ionize gases and create a dim, eerie glow like a permanent aurora. But this beauty would hide a silent killer: radiation. UV rays and cosmic radiation would start to fry the surface. Crops would die within weeks, animals would mutate or perish, the air would fill with strange glowing dust and metallic smells, a sign that the atmosphere's chemistry is breaking down. Eventually, the ozone layer would collapse, allowing deadly solar rays to penetrate unfiltered. The sky, once blue, would fade to a pale, burnt orange haze. Daylight would feel sharp and metallic, while night would be pitch black except for the stars, now brighter and closer looking due to the absence of atmospheric scattering. And then there's temperature. Without rotation, the day side of Earth would face constant sunlight, becoming a desert of molten ground and 200 degrees Celsius heat. The night side would freeze to minus 100 degrees Celsius or worse. Between them, a thin twilight zone might exist, a narrow band of survivable temperature where humanity could cling to life. Wind patterns would become permanent walls of flame and ice, endlessly colliding. Lightning storms lasting weeks would rip across the horizon, lighting up a dead, broken sky. If somehow we could survive, our descendants might live in massive underground bunkers, venturing outside only in radiation suits. The once gentle blue planet would become a divided world, half burning, half frozen, and all silent. Earth would no longer be a home, just a tomb of motionless air and ghosts of wind.
When the oceans turn against us. When we think of the ocean, we imagine calm blue waters, rolling waves, and the rhythmic pull of tides. But what if, in one terrifying instant, all of that serenity turned into chaos? Imagine this: the Earth suddenly stops spinning. The planet freezes mid-rotation, but the oceans do not. Every molecule of water continues racing eastward at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour. That's faster than a passenger jet. In that single moment, the laws of physics transform the oceans into unstoppable walls of water. Tsunamis thousands of meters high rise and roar across the planet. From the equator, gigantic water masses surge outward, slamming into every coastline in their path. The noise would be deafening, the low rumble of the earth itself mixed with the shrieking howl of the wind and crashing waves. Cities like Tokyo, New York, Sydney, and Rio de Janeiro would be gone within minutes. Entire nations near sea level, the Maldives, Bangladesh, the Philippines, would simply vanish beneath the relentless surge. The first waves would strip away everything: forests, mountains, skyscrapers, leaving nothing but bare land and debris. After the first few hours of unimaginable destruction, a strange new calm would follow. The massive kinetic energy that had driven the tsunamis begins to fade, but the oceans are no longer balanced. Earth's gravity and rotation normally hold the water evenly around the equator, creating that familiar bulge. Without spin, the water starts migrating toward the poles. Over the next weeks and months, sea levels at the equator would drop dramatically, while the Arctic and Antarctic basins would swell into immense new oceans. Tropical regions once covered by sea would become barren deserts, cracked like an ancient seabed, littered with coral and shipwrecks. Meanwhile, Europe and North America would drown beneath rising polar seas. Marine life would face instant extinction. Species adapted to warm waters would be trapped in freezing temperatures. Deep-sea ecosystems would be torn apart. The delicate balance that supports life in the oceans, currents, salinity, temperature, would vanish forever. The air itself would turn into a weapon. The energy released from billions of tons of moving water would drive hurricane-force winds around the globe. Ocean mist and debris would fill the sky, blocking sunlight for months. Rain would pour continuously, turning the remaining land into a swampy wasteland. Eventually, the planet might settle into a new, eerie equilibrium. Two gigantic polar oceans connected by narrow channels, and an equatorial band of desolate land stretching across the middle of the world. It would be a reminder of how fragile our spinning planet truly is, and how everything, even the calm blue ocean, depends on that perfect motion.
The collapse of the atmosphere. While the oceans rage on in the surface, the air above us would face its own violent rebellion. The atmosphere, just like the water, is always in motion because of Earth's rotation. It helps create global wind patterns, distributes heat, and shapes our climate. But if that rotation suddenly ceased, the atmosphere wouldn't stop with it. At first, the air would keep moving eastward at 1,600 kilometers per hour, a jet speed wind sweeping across the entire planet. Everything not firmly attached to bedrock would be ripped from the ground. Trees, buildings, cars, and even rocks would be hurled through the air like missiles. The skies would turn dark with dust and debris, transforming daylight into twilight. In coastal cities, this storm would combine with the earlier tsunamis to create an apocalyptic scenario. The sea roaring from one side while the wind screams from the other. Even high mountain regions, usually safe from storms, would face catastrophic pressure changes and deadly oxygen fluctuations. The constant movement of the atmosphere is what keeps temperatures balanced. Without it, parts of the Earth would become uninhabitable within hours. The side of the planet facing the sun would burn under scorching heat, while the dark side would freeze into a lifeless wasteland. Without spin, there would be no day or night cycle. One half of Earth would experience endless daylight, the other eternal darkness. Over time, these extremes would produce violent chemical reactions in the air. Water vapor would condense instantly in the cold zones, forming permanent ice clouds. Meanwhile, oxygen and nitrogen near the sunlit side could start to separate due to intense UV exposure, making the air toxic. Weather systems would cease to exist. No more trade winds, no more jet streams, only chaotic convection currents rising and falling unpredictably. Rain would become rare in some regions, endless in others. Tornadoes and hurricanes would vanish, but be replaced by colossal global storms, their scale beyond human comprehension. And perhaps the most devastating part, the loss of protection. Earth's rotation helps maintain the magnetic field that shields us from solar radiation. Without it, cosmic rays and solar winds would bombard the surface directly, turning the skies into glowing auroras of death. Radiation levels would soar, frying electronics and mutating life forms within days. Eventually, the atmosphere might start collapsing toward the equator, pulled by gravity into a dense, unstable belt. Breathing there would be almost impossible. Too much pressure in some places, too little in others. Humanity, if any still survived, would need underground shelters or sealed domes to withstand the constant storms and radiation. This new atmosphere would be thin, dusty, and filled with charged particles. Lightning would crackle endlessly across the horizon, illuminating a world without seasons, without sunrise, without hope. The beautiful blue sky, once a symbol of life, would fade into a permanent copper-colored haze. The frozen world. Imagine standing at the edge of a once vibrant forest, now silent, still, and white. The air is so cold that your breath turns into ice crystals the moment it leaves your lips. Trees stand like statues, frozen mid-motion, and every sound feels muffled, swallowed by endless snow. This is the new face of Earth after it stopped spinning, a planet divided into light and darkness, fire and frost. The side turned away from the sun has become a frozen hellscape. Without the daily cycle of sunlight, the temperature would plummet to below -100 degrees Celsius or -148 degrees Fahrenheit. Even the atmosphere would begin to condense and fall as snow, nitrogen and oxygen crystals raining from the sky. Oceans that once shimmered under sunlight would now be vast fields of ice, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Entire continents would be buried under kilometers of frozen water. The air would be still and heavy, and the silence, absolute. But this isn't just ice. This is death in slow motion. The freezing process wouldn't happen all at once. It would begin at the poles and spread relentlessly toward the equator, devouring forests, mountains, and cities. Rivers would freeze solid, trapping fish mid-swim. Animals would perish where they stood, preserved like ancient fossils in crystal tombs. Human civilization would fight desperately to survive. The few remaining people would huddle in underground shelters or geothermal caves, trying to hold on to warmth. They'd burn everything: wood, fuel, even plastic, to stay alive for one more night. But each day, the darkness would grow colder, thicker, and more unforgiving. Satellites in orbit would capture a haunting image, one half of Earth glowing with the eternal light of the sun, the other half completely black, a frozen wasteland reflecting a faint, eerie shimmer of ice. Over time, this frozen side would start to crack. The weight of the ice would press down on the crust, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. But even lava, once a symbol of life and energy, would cool instantly, forming glass-like rivers across the frozen plains. Eventually, the atmosphere itself would begin to collapsing. Oxygen would sink and become unbreathable. The last surviving humans, if any, would have to use pressurized suits or oxygen tanks just to step outside for a few minutes. And yet, amid this frozen silence, a strange beauty would emerge. The night sky would be alive with color, shimmering auroras dancing across the ice, ignited by unfiltered solar radiation. It would be both breathtaking and deadly, a reminder that even in destruction, nature creates art. If you could stand there, looking up at those glowing skies, you'd realize something profound. Our planet's warmth, its rhythm, its very ability to sustain life all depend on that simple act of spinning. Without motion, everything falls apart. Without motion, life itself stops. So next time you feel the earth beneath your feet, remember it's moving, constantly, silently, spinning just fast enough to keep us alive.
The burning side. Now imagine the opposite side of that frozen nightmare, a world that never sleeps, never cools, never knows night again. The sun side of Earth locked in eternal daylight. Here, the sky burns orange and gold, but not with beauty, with death. The moment Earth stopped spinning, one half became trapped facing the sun forever. What started as a bright morning quickly turned into a blazing inferno. Temperatures would skyrocket beyond 250 degrees Celsius, 480 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the inside of an oven. Oceans would begin to boil, vast clouds of steam would rise into the air, forming massive storms that would never move, because without rotation, there's no wind to carry them. The heat would strip the land bare, vaporizing rivers and lakes. Sand would melt into glass. Cities would crumble as steel structures softened and bent like wax under the unrelenting sunlight. You could walk out onto the land, but only once. The ground itself would be too hot to stand on. Within seconds, skin would blister, lungs would burn, and metal would glow red. The air would shimmer with heat waves, distorting everything like a cruel mirage. Plants would be the first to die. Their leaves would curl, blacken, and vanish. Then the animals. Then the humans who couldn't escape fast enough.
Survival here would be impossible without extreme technology, massive underground bunkers, deep ocean shelters, or space habitats orbiting above the dead planet. The clouds of vaporized water would trap even more heat, creating a runaway greenhouse effect, much like Venus. Over time, Earth's atmosphere would turn thick and poisonous. Sulfur and carbon dioxide would dominate, choking out all oxygen. The once blue sky would fade to a sickening yellow haze. And yet, amid all this destruction, there would still be movement, slow but powerful. Volcanoes would erupt more frequently as the crust expanded from the heat. Mountains would glow like molten lava lamps, and rivers of magma would carve glowing scars across continents. The land itself would shift and groan under the strain. The burning side of Earth would look like another planet, a glowing ember in space, where no life could ever exist again. The line between light and dark, the Terminator Zone, would become the only livable region left, where freezing night meets burning day. There, humans might build cities of survival, half in shadow, half in fire. Enormous walls would protect them from both sides, the blizzards of the dark and the firestorms of the light. Solar power would be abundant, but water would be scarce. People would adapt, perhaps evolve into something new, built for the balance between extremes. In this world, day and night would no longer exist, only eternal light and endless dark. Civilization would no longer depend on time, because time itself would lose meaning. And as you look at the scorched horizon, you might realize something. The spinning Earth is more than just motion, it's mercy. It shares the sun's warmth, spreads the cold, creates balance. Without it, life burns on one side and freezes on the other. This is not a world of peace. This is a planet on fire.
The twilight zone, the last line of life. Between the two extremes, the frozen wasteland and the burning inferno, there lies a narrow line where the sun forever kisses the horizon. This is the twilight zone, or as scientists call it, the Terminator line, the last refuge of life on a motionless Earth. Here, the sky is painted in shades of orange, purple, and gold. The sun never rises fully, never sets completely. It hangs forever on the edge, a haunting reminder of what once was, day and night locked in eternal balance. Temperatures here would hover between -10 degrees Celsius and +20 degrees Celsius, depending on location. It's not perfect, but it's survivable. Humans could live, breathe, and build here, though it would take immense adaptation. Imagine cities built in this eternal dusk, glowing domes powered by solar panels that collect just enough light. Wind turbines would stand tall, capturing the gentle breezes that still exist along this strip. Farmlands might spread across the temperate zones, growing crops that can survive both cold and heat. Artificial lakes would be created from the last reserves of water, carefully recycled and protected. But even in this safe zone, danger lurks everywhere. Move a few kilometers toward the dark side, and frostbite could kill you within minutes. Step too far into the light, and the heat would vaporize you instantly. Humanity would live on a knife's edge, between two ends of destruction. Communities would be forced to adapt in radical ways. Clothing would have to regulate body temperature constantly, cooling when hot, heating when cold. Homes would need double-layered walls, one side insulated from heat, the other from cold. And the biggest challenge? Energy. Solar panels would work, but only on the edge. Too much light burns them out, too little, and they fail. So humans might invent new hybrid technologies, geothermal energy from the crust's movements, and hydrogen fuel made from water vapor captured in the thin clouds above. But survival isn't just about technology. It's about psychology. Imagine never seeing nightfall or sunrise. No clock, no time zones, no rhythm. People would lose their sense of time, their biological clocks collapsing. Society might change completely, people dividing not by country or religion, but by proximity to light or darkness. Some might worship the sun as a god of fire. Others might turn to the shadows, finding peace in the cool and calm.
Conflict could erupt as humanity struggles over the few habitable regions left. Wars could be fought not for gold or oil, but for temperature zones. Still, hope would remain. Nature always finds a way. Some plants might evolve thicker leaves to trap moisture. Animals could develop heat-resistant skin or reflective fur. Humans, too, could adapt, through biology or technology, becoming the children of the dusk, beings who thrive in permanent twilight. The sight of this region from space would be breathtaking, a glowing golden ring around the planet, separating fire from ice. The last line of life. And if you stood there, looking up at the unmoving sun, you'd understand something profound. The spinning of Earth isn't just about motion, it's about balance, a cosmic harmony that allows everything to exist. Without it, we're nothing but survivors clinging to the edge of chaos. So the next time you feel the wind on your face or see the sunrise after a long night, remember that rotation is your shield, your protector, your silent guardian. Without it, the world would stop, and everything with it.
The aftermath, humanity's next step. The Earth has stopped spinning. The oceans have frozen on one side and boiled on the other. The atmosphere has thinned. Gravity has shifted, and humanity has been pushed to its absolute limit. Yet, life still fights to exist. In the twilight zone, that narrow golden line between day and night, the last generation of humans has learned to adapt. They call this new world Eterna, because time, as they once knew it, no longer exists. There is no sunrise, no sunset, just an endless, haunting glow on the horizon. Humans now live in underground cities, carved deep into the rock, safe from radiation, storms, and heat. Above, automated drones soar endlessly, scanning the skies for resources, mapping zones of survivable air pressure. Massive atmospheric towers extract oxygen from the thinning air, while energy plants harness both geothermal heat and artificial sunlight. But humanity hasn't stopped dreaming. They know they can't live forever on a dying planet, so they begin to look up again, toward the stars. Space agencies, now unified under one banner, have one mission: to leave Earth and find a new home. They launch generation ships, enormous crafts capable of sustaining life for centuries, powered by fusion energy and AI navigation. These ships carry not just people, but plants, DNA archives, animals, and seeds, the blueprint of Earth itself. It's humanity's second genesis, a rebirth among the stars. Meanwhile, some humans refuse to leave. They believe the Earth can heal. They call themselves the Restorers. These people dedicate their lives to rebalancing the planet, creating artificial winds, regulating temperatures, and using massive reflectors to mimic the spinning day-night cycle. Slowly, incredibly, the Earth begins to change. Ice melts in certain regions, clouds reform, the winds return, weak at first, but growing stronger. It's as if the planet, once dead, is taking a breath again. And then comes the discovery deep beneath the twilight crust, an unknown material, crystalline in structure, that generates rotational magnetic fields when charged. Scientists call it chromium, named after time itself. If they can harness it, they might restore the Earth's spin. For the first time in centuries, hope spreads across the surviving population. People gather in domes, watching massive turbines power up, the core of the planet awakening with a thunderous pulse. The project is dangerous. One miscalculation could rip the planet apart, but they have no choice. With a blinding flash and a sound that echoes across the lifeless plains, the chromium core activates. The Earth trembles, not from destruction, but rebirth. Slowly, ever so slowly, the sun begins to move. The eternal day brightens, the frozen night softens. Earth is spinning again.
The oceans start to flow once more, winds sweep across continents that haven't felt motion in centuries. The skies turn blue again, and as the first sunrise of generations breaks across the horizon, the surviving humans watch in silence, tears in their eyes. They realize what they'd lost and what they've regained. The spinning of the Earth isn't just science, it's life itself. A planet reborn, a humanity renewed, and a reminder to all that even when the world stops turning, the human spirit never does.
Imagine the silence after the chaos. The Earth, no longer spinning, hangs motionless in space. The skies settle into eerie stillness. The oceans, having ravaged continents, form new coastlines. The air calms, gravity stabilizes, and a strange equilibrium emerges. Humanity, scarred but surviving, faces a brand new world. This new Earth would have eternal days and nights, one side burned by the unending sun, the other frozen in darkness. Between them, a narrow twilight zone might become the only habitable strip, where humans could rebuild civilization. In this borderland, cities might glow under permanent sunsets, powered by geothermal energy from Earth's core and wind systems generated by extreme thermal differences. Over generations, life would adapt. Plants could evolve bioluminescence to survive the dark side, while humans might develop thicker skin and unique circadian rhythms. Scientists would work tirelessly to create artificial rotation, massive engines, satellites, or atmospheric turbines to mimic day and night cycles. Religion, philosophy, and science would merge as people rediscover the delicate balance that once kept their planet alive. The event would forever remind us that motion isn't just physical, it's life itself. Every second the Earth spins, it sustains oceans, winds, seasons, and existence. If one day that motion halts, everything we know, from tides to time, would cease. So, as you watch this video and glance at the moving sky tonight, remember, every sunrise you witness is proof that our world is still alive and turning. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this journey into science and imagination, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more mind-expanding videos like this. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think humanity could survive if the Earth stopped spinning? Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and goodbye.